Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond Loss, Loving Life with Karen Chaston. I'm Karen Chaston and I am so grateful that you are here. Please post where you're from, any comments in the chat, and let's have a conversation. Because today I have a very special friend and guest with me today, and that is Deb Drummond. Welcome, Deb.
Hi, thanks for having me, Karen.
I'm so excited about chatting with you because you are an entrepreneur and you've had your print supply business for 15 years, is that right?
13 years, yes.
Yeah, so pretty close. But more importantly, you have decided to put pen to paper and you have authored your first book, which is called, it's not having to get your shit together.
How to get your act together.
Yeah, how to get your act together. And it's all about your life skills guide, which I think is great. Hi, Darlene from Sydney, and hi, Tracy from Brisbane. Great to see you here today, and Alana as well. So, Deb,
yes.
You've had a lot of loss in your life. So would you like to just share a bit of your life story with us?
Yeah, well, I don't really know where to start on that. Well, as you mentioned, I'm a business owner and I'm living on the Central Coast, just to give everyone an idea of where I'm at. I was on the Northern Beaches where I started my business, and I started my business because my son was always very sick. So I've got two kids, a 21 and a 23-year-old. And when he was little, he had a lot of sickness. So I couldn't really hold down a job. Like I used to, pre-children, I was a marketer and in PR and journalism. But then you have children and that all goes out the window. So I talk about pre-kids and post-kids life. So I decided to start my own business so that I could be around for my son, who was sick a lot, and obviously my daughter as well, who's a couple of years older. So that was my journey in terms of going into becoming an entrepreneur and having the freedom to have my own business. So that has really served me well. And I've always loved writing. So when my kids finished school, I noticed there was a big gap in life skills. They're sent out the door at school with a certificate and really not much else. And I thought that was a massive oversight, not even like a directory of services or hotlines. You know, they might have learned at schools, they're learning life skills very ad hoc. So it's not, you know, if they're learning around drugs, they might learn about drugs, or they might bring an ex-drug addict in to talk about drugs. So it's a very ad hoc way, the way they're learning. And so my book just brings everything together and it's like a summary of life skills for them. So I'm very happy to say that Booktopia has taken it on as the publisher. And
yay! Congratulations.
Thank you. And they hope to get it into every senior student in Australia. So I've just made it very generic now. It used to be around New South Wales, but now it's Australia-wide. So hopefully it will be a really valuable resource to help young people feel more secure and confident going into the big wide world. Like they're being let loose, much bigger than going from primary to high school.
Oh, totally. And even just leaving school is a huge loss. You know, you're in your environment where you know your friends are there. Okay, sure, you may have some that aren't friends. You know, you may be being bullied and things like that. But you're in an environment that you know and you understand, and plus you're being guided. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into the world where I guess in the pecking order, you're now at the bottom of the new company and all that sort of stuff, especially when it's your first job. So let's talk about some of the things that you assist them to go through as they sort of take this with your real life skills.
Well, it's trying to make them more confident, just to take away some of those unknowns around like becoming an adult. So when we finished school, there wasn't MyGov and all those governance things to think about. Pretty much you did get a job and then you just learned kind of the hard way. But now there's a lot more to learn with cyber safety and internet. The internet has just changed it dramatically. So I cover off initially in the book. So this is the book, everybody.
Yeah, let's go through. Oh, yeah, that's cool.
That's not the school one. The school one will be how to get your act together, just to take away some resistance to that name, but that could be the title for retail.
Yeah.
Anyway, so importantly, I do have that directory of services at the front that I talked about, the list of contacts, because that's so important for them to have a quick reference. And some people say to me, well, they can Google all that information, but let's remember they can't Google something they don't know. So if they don't know what an ombudsman is, for instance, because I didn't know what one was till I was like mid-20s or later, they can't Google that. So they don't know the rights, for instance. So, this is giving them ideas on where to go if they need help. So the very first part is how to become what is expected of you as an adult and all the legal things.
Okay, so let's go into that because that's quite interesting. What is expected of us as an adult?
Well, you have to do some basic things. You're not under the umbrella of your parents or guardian anymore. So you do have to, as I mentioned, MyGov, Centrelink, get a tax file number. There's a
Medicare card.
Medicare card. There's a lot to do. And then if you're traveling overseas, you have to know how to stay safe, whether to get a visa, whether to get vaccinations, mandatory vaccinations. There's a hell of a lot to know. Just becoming an adult, and even around driving. I put a new chapter in my new edition around cars, owning your first car, because there's actually a lot to know in terms of buying a car, registering it, insuring it, third party, maintaining it. I even put a section
understanding the difference between. But understanding the difference between compulsory insurance, third-party insurance, which one to have, which not to have, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, giving them little tips. Like I've learned a lot of that the hard way myself. So I don't think they have to learn all those basic rudimentary things the hard way. Like let them learn love and emotions and all that the hard way, but not all the basic stuff, in my opinion. So when he was registering and insuring his car, he thought that this was in New South Wales. The green slip is the pink slip is separate. So I actually showed him a copy of the book, a page of the book, and said, "Well, this is the differences between them." So I've used it for my own kids.
Okay, let's go to some of the comments because this is really great. Can you see the comments, Deb?
Yes, I can. I need my glasses.
Cool. Okay, so you can see Alana, sounds great, as a single mother of 2 awesome daughters, 8 to 10. Any help like this can add real value, which is fantastic. So thanks, Alana. Tracy, so Tracy's saying the same thing, and it is. It's great that you're actually helping people to help their kids, and
as Tracy mentioned, she's I think you're at the school, a teacher's aide. And some of the people, I've gone into schools and in the office, they say, parents think that we're teaching them life skills, like, time management, that we're meant to tell them to bring their lunch. And, that we're putting a lot of emphasis on the teachers to teach them really basic things that the parents, there's who's doing what. The parents think the schools are and the schools think parents are.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of room for error there. And I believe that, the kids are finishing school. Do they really want to pick up a book? Probably not, because they've just finished all that. So this is more of a tool for parents to mentor their kids and say, hey, let's flick through this. Do you know how to stay safe going out? Do you know to have your phone charged? Do you know to have some carbohydrates before you go? Do you know what to do if a friend is drunk and call an ambulance? There's things like that, just practical things that they can flick through and say, what about a budget? Do you know how to budget your money? Don't spend more than you're earning. So it's a great tool, I think, for parents to sit down and have a chat.
And it's surprising, Deb, that, what flipped into my head then is when things come to you, it's surprising how, within days that you may have to use one of these skills that you're training with them. I can remember when my twins were little, I was part of the Twins Club here on the Gold Coast, and we used to get really great speakers come in and talk to us. And one of us is what to do when your kid, may have, nearly drowned and stuff like that. Within a week, I found one of my twin sons floating in the pool. Thank God he survived. But I knew what to do because, I knew to put him over, like, not to give him mouth to mouth, but to put him over my arms and sort of like breathe in on, pull in on his stomach, and that helped him. But it's surprising how often you think, oh, people won't read this, but when they do, it's just before they require it.
Yeah, well, I think what's really important, and in the drug and alcohol sort of section, I talk about recovery position, because there was a phase, certainly on the northern beaches, that there were a few issues with very drunk people being put on their back. And so, of course, if they are sick, they can choke. So recovery position is really important. I've done a nice diagram that shows them what to do. It's so simple. If you're going to put them home in bed, just pop them on their side and make sure they're monitored as well, watched over by a family member. Just don't leave them alone, because they could be unconscious as well.
Yeah, and like, that's such great advice. And let's face it, all of us have probably been in a similar situation, whether we were the person who was drunk or we had a friend who was drunk, not really knowing what to do and just hoping that we were doing the right thing.
Well, sometimes they're a bit scared to call an ambulance too, because they think, well, do I have to pay for that, or do they have to pay for it? So just call the ambulance. If you're worried, call the ambulance and sort that all out later. But I have given an example of how much an ambulance is. And also, ambulance officers don't need to call the police unless there's a death or an accident. So that's the other thing. If they're taking illegal drugs, then they need to know that police aren't going to rock up as well. But that's what scares them as well from seeking help. So little practical things like that.
Yeah. But okay, let's go back to
some questions. Yeah.
I was going to say, let's go back to some of the comments, because everyone's very interactive today. And thank you, everyone.
And my conversation with a 14-year-old. Yeah. It's good to start then, because once they're getting to 16 and 17, they're already in the thick of it, aren't they? And relationships, they do cover relationship communication, and especially bullying and creating strong boundaries. I think boundaries are very important for young people to understand, just to be firm, gentle but firm, and explain, please don't talk to me that way. And certainly bullying is a huge thing. So I've got lots of tips around how to handle bullies.
Oh, okay. Well, let's go in a little bit into that, because let's face it, we don't just get bullied at school. We can also get bullied in the workplace and by some of our friends who may not stay friends for long. So what sort of advice are you giving them on that?
Well, this is, again, the boundaries and knowing. I also talk about values and creating your own, or understanding what your values are, what are important to you, because that's the foundation of your friendships and who you let in and don't let in. So that's a critical part that I don't know if they are or are not doing that as part of the curriculum, but I think it's important. So we'd start off there, but certainly around cyberbullying, I've had some experts put some comments in on how to handle cyberbullies, and obviously having safe settings, blocking them, just block, get off social media for a while, because a lot of bullies just don't read the dialogue. I know it's really hard, and I've spoken to a lot of young people, and they're tempted to keep looking, I wonder what they're saying. Just don't be tempted. And I know it's really hard, but it's just becoming a bit more disciplined in how they're working on social media and not getting pulled into that. So having a strong sense of identity in themselves as well, and knowing their strengths and knowing that they don't need, and it doesn't matter what they say anyway, because 10 people can have 10 different opinions of you. And there's a lot of jealousy out there. So bullying is all around jealousy and trying to I put a bit about tall poppy syndrome too, because I thought that's quite important. In Australia, it's alive and kicking, tall poppy syndrome. So I've covered off that a little bit as well.
Now, have you heard the story about where the tall poppy syndrome came from?
No, I'd love to hear.
I'd like to share that story with you then today, and I'm sure that some of our people might know. So back in the convict days, when we were, all the convicts came here to build Australia, I guess to build, the communities and things like that. So the English soldiers needed them to work. So they couldn't tie them up and they couldn't chain them up, because obviously if they had to drag chains along all day, they couldn't have done a full day's work. So what they said to all of the convicts is, we're not going to chain you up. We are going to let you walk free, but we expect you to do a full day's work and all that sort of stuff. But if you run, we are not going to chase you. We don't know what's out there. We haven't ventured outside of where we are now, but we're not going to chase you. We're going to let you run. So we don't even know if you'll survive. But just know that everyone who is left behind will be beaten for allowing you to run. So what happened was, when someone got up to run, all of the convicts grabbed their feet and brought them back down. So that's where the tall poppy syndrome came from. Who do you think you are to stand up and run? We're going to drag you back down. Yes. Whether it's true or not, it's a good little story.
It's a great story. It is. And I have heard that before, and you told it very well off the cuff. Thank you. Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately down the track, I would love to have stories like that on video. The book was supposed to be just as a background to videos and talking to real people about experiences, because life is better learned through people's experiences. So we talked about like the ex-drug addict, or somebody who's succeeded or failed and then started another business. So it's a great way to teach life lessons through people's stories. So hopefully down the track I can do a bit more of that.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd love to tell that story, Deb.
Oh, I know. Well, you tell the story. I've interviewed you before, so but I intend to do more of that. And also, I want young people's stories I want them to upload their own personal stories. I've got a section on the website, which is real-life.com.au, and they can pop their stories up. I have to moderate them, but they can explain experiences that they've had that might help other people, like what to do or not to do. So that's really useful to hear it from their own age group as well.
Yeah, I know. I can remember when my kids, they're all in their late 30s now, but I can remember when they were, in their, late teens, early 20s, traveling the world. And I was like, they'd come back with some of the stories and I'd be like, I don't want to know about it, because I don't want to have to worry about you when you're going out and about and stuff like that. But that's the thing. They're not, through sharing their stories, they can actually help someone younger or someone else to go, oh, maybe I need to double think this, or maybe I should say no to this, and it's about connecting to your own inner wisdom as well, because we all have it, and it's about trusting it.
Yeah, well, I listen to my children all the time. It's a two-way street, the wisdom. I'm learning so much from them. So it's not just a one-way thing. And, even around, you were talking about experiences before. I've got a girlfriend I would interview, and she was she was drink driving and had an accident and rode off, I think, 4 cars and her own.
Oh, my God.
She was the highest ever, I think, in New South Wales. It's a great story because thankfully no one was hurt, but she had to pay over 100 grand. That was her punishment, if you like, for that silly mistake. Yeah, so
it's a very expensive drink then, wasn't it?
It's an expensive drink, yeah. So
they're
stories, they're the things I'd like to share as experiences. Because I better not drive, because people are still tempted to drive. And even if they're just slightly over, it doesn't matter that she was highly over. Even if she was moderately over, she's still over. Still the law.
Yeah, well, I have a hairdresser up here on the Gold Coast, and her husband, when he was 17, he was driving. He had no alcohol. He had no drugs in his system, but he ended up killing 2 people in that car, and he ended up going to jail.
Oh, wow.
And he's still, 20 years later, he is still carrying this burden of, being responsible, because he was responsible for obviously driving the car. And it's just knowing those things, that the consequences of your actions today, there's always an opportunity cost. There's always so much that you don't realise, and you only think I'm in the moment, but you don't think long term, what may be the outcome.
Exactly. Well, a car's, I think the average is 1.5 tonne. You're driving a pretty heavy bit of machinery there, and you take that for granted. And the other thing about driving is that they have a mandatory 100-hour training to drive, but there's not a mandatory 100-hour time to learn about life. So that's where I would like to ultimately get into schools at the end of a year, have a life skills like an expo. And you can bring lots of different people and have chats about.
I would love to be part of that. The things that I talk about, moving beyond loss and things like that, I always go, I wish we'd not learned it at school. Would we have valued it? Would we understood that, life is a journey from love to loss and back to, and then back to love again. But it's that journey that we don't understand, and it doesn't have to be as hard as what we make it, because we've never really been taught how to move beyond loss. But being part of that sort of expo of actually going, look, stuff is going to happen to you, and it's all about how you handle it and how you find the gift in it. And whether it's a perceived negative or positive, there is always a gift from everything that happens in our life. As you said, your son was sick, but it gave you the gift of starting this amazing business that you have grown, which you probably would never have even thought about it if you weren't, wanting to be home for your son.
Well, and I think the same applies to the gift is resilience. Like I think I'm a highly resilient person. And then I look upon other people now they're carrying on about the minutiae of life. And I think, just why are you bothering? And why are you bothering with those people in your life, and having people that drag your emotions down like that? I'm very ruthless these days. I think less is more with friends. And I've said that openly in the book. I think these young people think, I need 400 friends. Well, you can't have 400 friends, not close friends. And having relationships are about like building a foundation to a home, and then you put little finishing touches on. It takes time to build strong and healthy relationships. Yeah. And sometimes you have to let some of those go if they're not benefiting you, and if they're dragging your emotions down.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're so right, Deb. And look, some people, there's an old saying, some people are there for a lifetime, some are there for a season. And it's about understanding that as you change, not everyone is going to want to come on that new journey with you. But you can't go back. That's what I think this pandemic's about. It's, people go, I can't wait to get back to normal. And I go, but we're not ever going to go back to normal, because there's always going to, we've all changed over this time. Maybe we've all started to value life more, spend less, do so many different things.
I think I'll put a section in here. Lots of people said, put something in about being adaptable and, not being too rigid in your direction. I think a lot of people felt confronted by COVID because that they were very rigid in their thinking. And the more flexible and innovative people went, oh, here's a little opportunity. I think I'll go down there. So it's important, yes, to have your goals, because you've got to know where you're going and have a plan to get there, but also to be adaptable to change. And that's where the opportunities pop up. Yeah.
Oh, I totally agree. Like for me, I was doing 3-day Beyond Loss, physical retreats. Well, that sort of went out the window. I've taken it all online. I now have clients all over the world. So it was like, adapt. There is a way. Look, and let's face it, we live in a world that we can talk to anyone, anywhere in the world, which I love. I love learning about people. I love learning about different cultures and seeing people that, at the end of the day, we're all basically the same. All we want to do is have a happy life, have a nice home, and our family looks after.
And the other thing to remember with that is that all those things we took for granted that we can no longer do, like going out and having a dance and standing up and having to sit down, we took all that for granted. So we have to value what we've got here and now more, because it can be taken, it can be gone.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, let's go back to some more comments. I don't know where we're at. Like Tanya says, this sounds really great to bring into schools. And she's just had the conversation with her 14-year-old. So, Deb, you've been trying to get into schools, haven't you? So if anyone on this, listening today or listening to the recording, if you have a school that's open, please, reach out to Deb, because sure, Booktopia is looking at getting the book into schools and things like that. But just imagine a school having Deb coming along and talk to the kids and to explain, why you created this book. It was because your two children, you were like, I don't think you're ready to go out in the world. I don't think you have all the skills that are required.
Absolutely. Well, I'm hoping Booktopia will get it into all schools, because the marketing side of a book is the hardest aspect. It's one thing to write it, and now you've got to sell it into a market you're not familiar with, and then there's gatekeepers. You've got to get past those people. So it's about, walking the talk and building it up and the interest around it.
Yeah.
But the thing is with a book, with life skills, is you don't know what you don't know. So that's, I think we talked about that. So that's where they can have a look at where the gaps are when they're leaving.
Yes.
I even a lot of my friends don't know how to budget. We were never taught. So you learn money from your parents or whoever your biggest influences are. And if they had a hang up around money, then you just take that into your life.
Yeah. You certainly do. So many people are, money doesn't grow on trees, and, all these sort of things.
Money's, because that's a message that, money is not easy to come by. So that's not a story of abundance. It's a story of what's the opposite of
lack.
Of lack.
Yeah, it's totally a story of lack. And, and I always remember, which was a bit of a joke, if you want to know what God thinks of money, just look at the people he gives it to and all those sort of things, And it does. These sayings have all come, for generations, thousands and thousands of years of people putting money down and not understanding that money is just an energy. It comes and it goes and it flows. But it's, and it's making sure that, more goes in, or comes in than goes out.
Yeah. Well, that's around self-talk. I do talk about that as well. So money is a self-talk thing, and so is your self-esteem. So saying good words to yourself and to other people. And that's very healthy. If you're attacking people, then you're judging yourself as well. So I talk a little bit around that in simple terms, the psychology and the mental health part in this new version. I've really expanded out whilst trying to keep it as simple as I can. But I've added a part in there around understanding emotions and feelings, just because that might not be covered at school, and just to touch on that, so they understand that anger, for instance, is a natural emotion, and not to feel shamed over that.
Yeah. And you deep dive into them, getting to actually deep dive into themselves and say, what is this emotion about? Like, why is it that Sally Joe makes me angry, whereas, Deb doesn't, sort of thing? Do you deep dive into those sort of things?
Yeah. I think that's really important, just understanding their reactions and just to sit back. And so a little bit of anger management, how to deal with conflicting, if you're in a conversation of conflict. So little tips on how to do that.
Yeah. Oh, that's fabulous. So what else do you deep dive into? And Tracy here has said, this is wonderful. You are so great, ladies. Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, nice to see that.
Well, obviously, when I was leaving school, I didn't understand around what a Bachelor of Arts was, and I just felt I was really scared of that. Well, what did that mean? Even though I was accepted into a course, I didn't fully understand it. So I've just covered off, what to expect when starting uni or vet, and what it all means, just to take the mystery out of it, and how to choose a career that suits you. What is your interest? What's your passion? How to identify that as well. What do you love doing? What do you wake up to? Look at your web browser. What do you look at mostly? I love
that. I love that. One of the 5 Regrets of the Dying, which is a book by Bronnie Ware, a palliative care nurse, the number one was, I wish I had lived a life true to me. Now, so many people, they choose their careers based on what their parents or their grandparents say to them. So the fact that you're giving them the skill to actually say, what makes you passionate? What makes you light up?
100%. Well, I use that on my son as well, because my son, as you know, is a pro golf or trainee pro golfer. But for a while there, he decided that girls were important and making a lot of money in retail golf, that was more important than his golf. So the worst thing you can say to a kid is, go and play golf. So I just said, you don't want to be, sitting back in 30 years going, I wish I'd done that.
Yeah.
Which is what so many people tell you. I wish I'd done that. So
exactly.
Regrets. And so he went straight back to golf, and now he's a trainee pro golfer with a PGA. So, he's following his passion, and he didn't let some, instant gratification thing take him off tangent. Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, but good on you too, Deb, because it would have been so easy for you not to have sort of used a bit of, just make sure you have no regrets down the thing, not reverse psychology, but you know what I mean. Because it would have been so easy as a parent to say, look, just get out there and do it, which he would have hated.
I've just spent $4,000 on your golf clubs, and I've, travelled around the countryside with the Jack Newton Juniors for, I could have done the guilt trip thing, which obviously I wouldn't do, but thankfully he woke up in time himself. So that's really important.
But he's still young. He's only 21.
Yeah. But to do it, this is really, it's even too late, getting a little bit further on. If you're going to do a traineeship, it's much better to do it, the younger they are around.
Yeah.
I mean, do it any time, of course, but it's easier now to get that behind you and then make some career choices from there.
Yeah, wow. But that's pretty cool, isn't it, being a PGA trainee golfer?
Yeah, well, he's off +2, and if anyone knows golf, then a plus is great. So I'm very proud. And I have to mention that I have a beautiful daughter who's 23, and she's a school teacher. And that's the trouble with golf. When you talk to your friends, you say, oh, my daughter's a school teacher and my son's a golfer. They go, oh, golf. And then they want to talk golf. And she gets sort of a bit put out. So I try and treat them equally. And she's an amazing.
Yeah, but let's face it, the school teachers this year, like nurses, have come into their own.
She's an incredible human being and a fabulous teacher. Everybody loves her. So, yeah, they have a little wisdom of their own to teach me.
Okay. So, is there another book in you, Deb?
I wrote a book 15 years ago, and I didn't publish it on the basis of advice from a lawyer, because it was around back before people really understood chemicals in everyday life. So it was a mum's version of how to avoid chemicals in food, and because my son's so sensitive to chemicals, that kind of evolved. But yeah, I didn't publish it, but I did put I slipped a little bit into this book just to be careful of your lifestyle choices, that chemicals.
And the food you eat?
The food, personal care products. I haven't gone into it in detail, but I just thought, look, I did write that book before, so I'll just put some of that in this book as well, just from an awareness point of view, to even using
I think that would have been a good book. Why didn't you publish it?
Well, but I didn't want to be the educator. 15 years ago, people didn't really understand it, so I didn't want to be out there spruiking and getting attacked. Actually, I'm not going to mention vaccinations, but I had a view around that. So in many ways, I'm glad I didn't publish it, because sometimes once you publish it, if you do change your views over time, then it's already published. So, yeah, you can certainly get attacked on a lot of those controversial debates. Which
you can change your views, can't you? Isn't that part of life?
Yeah.
The more you become educated?
Yeah, I just come out of a really messy marriage breakdown, and I wasn't personally, I talked about resilience, how I'm resilient now, but back then I was far from resilient. I was just an absolute stark-raving, mess. So, I didn't think I had the capacity to stand up and talk about chemicals in food and to educate people at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that the marriage breakdown did take its toll on me, but that's life. Yeah. And that's another valuable lesson.
Yeah, but what I've found, obviously, and the more and more clients that I work with, it's your, like your divorce, it's your your sort of negative loss events in life that actually create you and make you and put you on a path. Like, you know, most people know I used to be a CFO. There's no way I would have ever been doing what I'm doing now if it wasn't for a couple of tragic loss events. So it does put you on a path where you want to help others. You want to make it easier.
Young people think we're just learning what we want to be rather than what we don't want to be, and that's part of the learning process. What don't we want in our lives as much as what we do want? So that's part of the learning process. Doesn't all go along swimmingly all the time, and that's good, because that's where your best lessons are, when you're hitting rock bottom. And you know, as a child, I did the same. And so basically, in this book, all the things I would have liked to have known as a messed up teenager. It would have been really valuable to have that.
Yeah. And, you know, I agree. And eating, do you touch on, you know, your diet, what you eat, exercise, all those sort of things?
Yeah, I've touched on diet, but I don't go into fad diets. It's just having a balanced diet and why, and all the different ways that you feed yourself emotionally as well. So I've touched on a more holistic approach to health, so mental health. Diet and those sorts of things. So that's I've tried to cover it as much as I possibly could. I have actually included the guide to eating that they would have at school. But remember, they don't have a scrapbook of stuff that they got at school. So this, again, it's not fad diet. It's just a balanced diet, and talk to, you know, potential allergies as well, because I'm a very allergic person. So I thought if they're not feeling that great, go to the doctors and get some tests done, get the bloods, see what your IgE levels are. If they're feeling a bit crappy, they might be allergic to things. You know, they can hear, but it might be a physiological thing. So eliminate all the physiological things first, and then start working on that part.
Yeah. I always like the great advice of what you eat today walks and talks tomorrow. So if you're feeling off tomorrow, just have a look, check back. What did I eat yesterday that I haven't had before? Oh, maybe it's that. Maybe I have an intolerance to it. You might not be allergic to it, but you may have an intolerance to it.
Yeah. Well, awareness, being aware of their bodies. And I've also put a section in here on when to go to the doctors and for what. So different health checks for under 25. So breast tests, cholesterol, dental, glucose level, STIs. If they're sexually active, they need to be tested more frequently, and how to stay safe sexually is really important, because I'll tell you what happened. I had to put in there about contraception, and my daughter came to me and said, oh, one of her friends, she thought that the withdrawal method was going to protect her, and I said, and my daughter said, oh, sorry, darling, I think you're
so many Catholics in the world.
I'm going to take you straight to the doctor. So even my daughter was the wise girl there, and she took her straight to the doctor. And I thought, God, I haven't put anything about contraception or birth control in my book. So I went scuttling back to the book and put that bit in. So really, really important part.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so some people, you know, don't understand, and let's face it, the school education that I had when I was at school, they just showed us someone with herpes and everyone went, ugh. And that was it. That was it. There was nothing else about it. And I was like, typical Catholic school. No wonder I ended up pregnant at 16. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. But it's true. It is about educating them and helping them to understand that we don't know what we don't know.
Absolutely. And I've covered off like stereotypes as well, because that's really important to make them aware of that, and to stop people in a lot of the talk that goes on is just this underlying impressions being put into their minds. Like, you know, boys wear blue, girls wear pink, and it starts off very early, but just breaking that stereotype, and that the masculine defines, and that toxic masculinity that people talk about, breaking down some of the stereotypes, and also obviously the different gender issues that young people face, so coming out and how they can have the conversation.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. And I hope you put something in along the lines of a man is not a financial plan.
Yes, actually, I used your advice on that. I put a little tip: make sure that
I
you're independent.
even telling you that.
Because it is very important for them to be independent and not rely on a partner. And even if they form a partnership, they still have their own personal accounts. Really important just for their independence and know their PIN numbers. I mean, I know they're not like the age of our mums and that they didn't understand any of that, and the men ruled the finances.
Yeah.
But a very manipulative tool in relationships. So definitely an important tip.
It is a very important tip. Like I work with a lot of women who have been through nasty divorces, ended up sleeping on their, young son's couch, 21-year-old son's couch, because the husband literally had access to all the money and he just cut her off, but to understand that not only does it give you it gives you your self-respect and your self-independence, that you know what, if the marriage does break down, I am still financially viable within myself.
That having to be answerable and to another person, they have to have their independence within that relationship.
Yeah,
if they've got a mortgage or rent, that's collective, but the rest, the personal accounts.
Yeah. I remember when my twins were 8 months old, and because I was on maternity leave, believe it or not, back in 1984. I worked for the Commonwealth Bank, and I had maternity leave, paid maternity leave in those days, which was very unusual. And I remember it was like I just finished it, and I wasn't going back to work, and I wanted to get my hair done. And my husband, well, we can't afford it, and I go, oh, no one's ever going to tell me I can't have my hair done. But, it makes you more independent, so that you always go, well, just as though I've got my little essentials. Like, we're still married, so it's, it wasn't that drastic. But, yeah.
To go out shopping and say, don't tell your father. And so we'd have to sort of go, oh, and whenever someone said don't say something, I always just would spit it out anyway, so as a little girl. So don't tell your father.
But it is ridiculous, that too. But anyway, that's a parenting book, I think.
Yeah. Well, and on the moving out part, so I give them some tips on how to move out of home, and I even cover off doing laundry and going shopping, doing the first shop, and how to get your first rental property and some of the tips around that, because it is hard to get your first rental.
Yeah, if you don't have any rental history.
So there's some good tips around that as well.
Oh, okay. And do you talk about share accommodation, because that in itself is
and having an understanding of who's paying what. So the team has to come together and understand what's expected of them, and who's cleaning and managing
the food, cooking, and having your shelf on the fridge doesn't mean that it's still going to be there later.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So any questions? Has anybody got any?
Let's have a look. Tracy, we don't do spiritual readings. I talk to people obviously about different loss and how to create a better life. So I can't help you with the reading that you've requested for today, but I'm sure you understand.
The important thing that I haven't mentioned is mental health. I don't know why I have not touched on that.
Okay, let's go into mental health.
That is an extremely important, and I've expanded it in this version of the book. So understanding their mental health, where they can go for help, very important to have a conversation. If they are not coping, then holding it in only makes it fester more. So I've got a lot of tips around self-care and self-love, firstly, but also if they are in a bad way, then talking, that's the only way people are going to understand what they're thinking, because a lot of people who are feeling suicidal, they withdraw.
Yeah.
And it makes it very hard for people to get closer to them or to even understand what's going on, which is sometimes why we get a shock when somebody does something unexpected.
Yeah.
Because we've not seen it coming. So looking for the signs.
Yeah.
And having the conversation, and not just are you okay, but expanding that conversation, because to me, are you okay is like, how are you? And the answer is, yeah, I'm fine. So are you okay is, yeah, I'm okay. but you've got to continue the conversation. If you have any doubt that they're not their usual selves, is just have the conversation.
Yeah, great.
So video's gone all blurry. Oh, there you are. You're back again.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It goes up and on. Okay, so what I've done is I've just put the link into your website, Deb, because Tanya just asked to purchase the book. Can she get it from your website?
Yes, she can. Yeah, the hard copy, I do believe the hard copy is better because, as I said, you can sit down and mentor your kids. But there is, at the moment, there's still a free ebook on there. And the ebook's handy because you can click on all the links to all the different things that I'm guiding them to.
Yeah.
So if they're looking to, for car insurance, they'll know where to go and they click on a link. So it's quite adaptable from that point of view. So that's still free. I'd encourage everyone just to get on there and grab a free one, share it with your friends while you can, because Booktopia will probably make me take that down, I'd imagine.
Yeah. But so can they get the actual hard copy from your book, or is it?
Yeah, from the website they can, and I'll send that out to them. Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool.
Website.
Okay, so let's talk about another chapter that we haven't discussed in your book. I'm sure there's some more.
Well, it was more the mental health thing that I wanted to cover off, because I think a lot of people don't know how to talk to people that are withdrawing. So that was really important that I expanded on that. And as I mentioned, the emotions and feelings.
Yeah.
And secrets to success, I put in a bit around a visualization and the law of attraction. And, these might be some of the things I've learned. Some people will take it on and some people won't, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I did produce what I'm calling a dream board, which is like it's like a vision board, but it's got one side your professional dreams, and then your personal dreams, how you want your life to look, and then some of your values down the middle and your vision for yourself in the heart of it. And yeah, I really want to get that out as a little value-added thing. So I printed it out on an A1, and it's fabulous just to write all your little scribey things and thoughts on.
Yeah.
So 1, 5, and 10 years. I think it's 10 years.
And it's surprising how when you look back at those, when you create them, you go, oh, I wrote this down and look, I've done it all. It's really surprising how it does actually work.
It does, and it just keeps them on purpose and focused on where they want their life, how they want their life to look. And I talk about collages as well, so pulling out certain images of what you're looking for. I know that sounds materialistic, but it might be a car, a house, a boyfriend or girlfriend, and just bring visuals of those and have collages. And you can even stick it on the little dream board as well of how you want your life to look.
Yeah, that's what Tanya's just said. I did the dream board about 20 years ago, and it has all happened. I'm a big believer of the law of attraction. Good on you, Tanya. Thanks for sharing that.
Tanya, yeah, I 100% believe that. Because years ago when I first started my business, in the very early stages, I said, I really want a convertible. So I printed out the convertible, the BMW, and I stuck it on my wall. I looked at it every single day, and then within 2 years, because I needed 2 years for the business, to get a loan and anyway, long story. But I eventually got the car of my dreams.
Same colour?
I can't remember the colour. It wasn't usual. So I got a silver, so I can't really remember. But it was definitely, embedded in my brain that that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
So I'm a strong believer in that.
Yeah. And it's surprising, isn't it, that I did the same thing with my Mercedes, my little red Mercedes. I kept seeing them everywhere, and I'm like, I'm getting one of them. I'm getting one of them. And before I knew it, it was it. I'm now doing that with a Porsche SUV. I really like it. So I'm just looking and going, I'm going to get one of them. I really like them. Every time I go driving, I see them all the time. I'm like, thank you, thank you, thank you.
I know it sounds
Who knows where it's coming from.
Yeah, but I did that with the house as well. So I'm fully independent. I've got my house, and it's so important to have vision.
Yeah. I don't know if it's you that's freezing or it's me.
Me.
Okay. Okay, cool. I've got you. Okay. There's some so Tracy, wish my dreams would come true for me. Of course they will. Getting married was one of my biggest dreams and that happened. Fantastic, Tracy. That's to see. And but some of my other dreams haven't. What have I done wrong? You haven't done wrong. You just haven't given it enough time. Or maybe they weren't your ideal dreams. You know, there is a saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your dreams. So maybe they probably weren't the perfect dream for you in this lifetime. So have a little visit and have a tweak at it and just have a look at it.
If you've got doubt around a dream or a vision, then that's going to stop you doing that. So any doubt is going to, you've got to absolutely believe you're in that moment and really feel it and believe it. Yeah. So, I mean, don't worry, I haven't fulfilled all of my dreams, so I'm not perfect at this. I'm a work in progress like everybody.
We all are.
This is the thing with having a book like this. I'm not assuming I know everything. In fact, quite the opposite. So I'm learning something every day, and I had to put a line in the sand. So I sent the copy off today to the publisher. You have to draw a line in the sand and say, okay, enough lessons now. That's it. Yeah. No more. Because lessons come.
You can always do another edition later down the track.
Yeah, so I'll just keep a little notebook of any new things I've learned to try and put in there that will add value to the book. And I'm sure everyone will get something out of it. And if they don't, you know, I will guarantee that. And if they don't, I'll give them money back.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Tracy, she's just written, they have all my real dreams. Have no doubt, but nobody else believes in me. That's the issue. That's the issue. You want people to believe in you.
You have to believe. Right. I don't have anyone in my life in terms of a close partner, and I've had to be like on my own island. I don't look to anyone for reinforcement. Absolutely nobody. I am on my island, and I give myself my own reinforcement.
Yeah.
Finish. And
I think it's about being like that as well.
Yeah.
Because sometimes your partner will doubt what you want to do, and it's like, no, this is right for me, and that you then going and doing it and achieving it.
That's living your own dream, because if you're doing somebody else's dream, then you're going to go off tangent. You know, if you're love carpentry and somebody says to do accounting, then you're not following your own dream, and you will not be happy. That doesn't matter what other people think. It's your life.
Yeah. Actually, I can remember years ago, I was in a B&I group, and the lawyer there, I had a one-to-one with him, and he actually said to me, he you know, was a very successful lawyer, had a lot of amazing cases throughout his career, and he said, and I said to him, is this what you always wanted to do? And he goes, no. He said, if I'd had my way, I would have been a musician. He said, but my parents had been lawyers and I was expected to become a lawyer and everything like that. And he goes, and I always think, I wonder what I would have been like as a musician. And I went, I wonder what songs the world have lacked through you not following your dream. And he goes, yeah, which is really sad when you think about it. Even though you may succeed in your your career that you followed, it's always about what was the opportunity cost, and also, you know, were you actually always as happy as what you could have been? Yeah. And he actually said no. So,
when young people are with their parents are imposing their beliefs and dreams onto the young people. And years ago, when I was going to give the book away, I'd had enough, and I met a young man just coming off the surf at Narrabeen, and I was just sitting there having a little moment. And we had a chat. I just said, oh, how's the water? And then I said, oh, what school are you at? And he said, oh, yeah, I'm doing HSC, but I'm not very smart. And I said, hang on, that's not a very good, but my dad wants me to finish HSC. And I said, look, that's not very good self-talk. You know, what do you want to do? And his dad was a very successful tiler, and he was going to go into tiling. So he was basically following his parents' dream for him, but school didn't feel that he was not good enough, because he was clearly not very academic, but he was extremely good interpersonally, and having a fabulous conversation with some old duck, me, sitting at the beach, you know, very interpersonal skills, and they're the hardest to teach.
Yeah, he would have loved that conversation. I wonder what he's doing now. whether he actually went into tiling because of you or not.
Make the most of all trades.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
exactly.
Great trade. So
yeah.
He was
Okay. Yeah, exactly. So Tanya had to leave. She said, "Thank you, ladies. I have to leave. I think I was drawn to this live feed for a reason." Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? How you sort of just may see something pop up, and before you know it, you've gone down this rabbit hole and you thought, but I really needed that today. It's so exciting. Well, Deb, you said to me, I didn't think you'd last the hour. We're nearly up.
Well, talking of the rabbit trap and things coming into you, well, I'd put the book aside for a while because I'd done the first version 2 years ago, and things weren't popping up for me. And it was only when I opened it up again and opened my mind to it that everything came flooding in. You have no idea just how many lessons just landed in my lap. And
I can imagine.
Thoughts, and I was in this innovation phase. So there's a lot to be said for that things are timely.
Totally. So everyone, we're down to 4 minutes, Deb. Like, how quickly did we go? I know. It just goes so quickly. So for any questions, really quickly, thank you, Tracy. Just needed to talk to someone. It's really good to have you all here. So there's Deb's real website. I've also posted it in the comments. And as always, if you'd like to download my Life After Loss ebook, you can get it through that website, which will help you to not only understand how you can move beyond any of the 40 plus loss events, but it also assists you to understand why we suffer and grieve and how that doesn't have to be the road that we travel after any kind of loss. So I've really enjoyed having you today, Deb, as my guest and to catch up with you and to chat with you. So is there any parting wisdom that you would like to share with our viewers, and either live or obviously in the recording?
Well, I think that my motto is you don't have to learn everything the hard way. And so I think that's what I'm trying to solve with my book. Is that all those simple, practical lessons don't have to be learned by trial and error.
Yeah, and that's amazing advice.
Yeah, and learn all as I said, the matters of the heart in the harder way, and that's trial and error. But you don't have to learn all the simple things that way.
No, and that is fantastic advice. Okay, everybody. Well, thanks for being here, and thank you, Deb. And all the best with Booktopia. I'm sure it's going to make such a difference.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone who commented.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.